Alright, Shalom. First and foremost, call Halal Yamla, Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem HaRachakwadash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders, a great millstone that I learned the truth from. And also peace and salutations to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. And the title of this video is going to be, Truth is the number one threat against Edomite supremacy. Alright? Because of course, as we see, that's currently what we're under right now. All right, we're under the rulership of Esau, Edom, via this beast system, America, NATO, and EU, which is basically the revival of the ancient Western Roman Empire. Okay, the fourth beast spoken of in Daniel the 7th chapter. All right, where we're under the rulership of Esau, Edom, via the little horn that will come out of the fourth beast, which is Babylon the Great America. Okay, and as well aided by its NATO and EU allies. All right. As we're at the end of Esau's world, and he knows that he has but a short time left. Okay. Ultimately, in these latter days, okay, the number one threat against Edomite supremacy, all right, this beast system, his image, as well as his mark, okay, and this NWO system that the elites of Esau, Edom are trying to establish in the earth in these latter days. All right. The number one threat, or number one thing that's in the way of Esau's agenda, all right, his wicked satanic agenda, is not the sword or militias, okay, because Esau already dominates in those fields, all right, via the because what his blessing is, he was given the blessing of the fatness of the earth by way of what? The sword, okay, violence, warfare, military power, okay. So Esau already dominates when it comes to the sword and the militias and military power and things like that. So he's not threatened by people rising up, okay, and taking up arms and, threatening to do this, that, and the third. No, the number one thing that Esau is threatened by in these latter days, as is at the end of his world, is truth, okay, truth speech, okay, especially the truth that's coming out of the Holy Scriptures, all right, the Holy Scriptures of Yahweh Ba'ashem Shai, via the mouth of the prophets, the men of the Lord, okay, via the Rachakwadash, the Holy Spirit, all right. Because as we go, let's get Revelation 20, all right, Revelation 20 and verse 7, it says, "And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison," okay, and of course, there's Satan. All right, the Satan that is speaking of right here is not talking about this spiritual demon Satan literally being loose out of some prison from underneath the earth for after 1,000 year, sentence or whatnot. No, okay, because when you go into this word Satan, all right, Strong's G 4567, all right, Satanas, and when you go into it, it says adversary, which is what the name Satan means, adversary. And then it goes into the prince of evil spirits, all right, but then as you continue to read down, okay, definition B, it says a Satan-like man, okay, a Satan-like man, all right, and what man, or rather nation of men, okay, nation of people in the earth, okay, are doing the working of Satan. Okay, Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, all right, which is known as the wicked according to the Bible, all right, according to the book of Malachi, the 1st chapter and the 4th verse. Okay, the biblical Edomites are mentioned by name as the wicked nation of people according to the Bible, all right, the people which whom the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Shai would have indignation with, okay, righteous anger or justified anger with forever, as it speaks of when you read the book of Malachi, the 1st chapter and the 4th verse, all right, and especially here in these latter days, okay, Esau, Edom, all right, that man of sin, the son of perdition, pursuant to 2 Thessalonians, the 2nd chapter, will be on the earth in these latter days doing the working of Satan, okay, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, okay. These things would be done, okay, by Esau, Edom, okay, who is the physical counterpart of the spiritual demon Satan on the earth in these latter days. All right. So Revelation 20 verse 7 again, and when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison, And what does 1,000 years represents? Okay, the so-called Dark Ages. Okay, what Esau calls so-called Dark Ages. All right, which is a period of 1,000 years. All right, from around the 4th century A.D. up until the 14th to 15th century A.D. All right, we're during that 1,000 year period. Okay, Esau, Edom. All right, after the decline and eventual fall of the ancient Western Roman Empire, right? Esau, Edom was eventually ran into the caves of the Caucasus Mountains. Hence why today they call themselves Caucasian, right? Okay, they were ran into the caves of the Caucasus Mountains. Okay, living as cavemen, complete beasts, savages, right? And during that 1,000 year period, okay, of the so-called Dark Ages, it was what? So-called dark-skinned people that were ruling throughout Russia, all right, Europe, okay, you had the Moors, right? Different, different groups of our forefathers, all right, Israelites, that were ruling throughout Russia and throughout Europe, okay, so-called black history throughout Russia and Europe, okay, what Esau calls as Dark Ages, okay, so that's a 1,000 year period that it's talking about, right? For the dark ages, basically, okay. And so it says, Revelation 20 verse 7, and when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan, okay, Esau, Edom, the Satan-like man, shall be loosed out of his prison. Okay, so after that 1,000 year period, starting at the during the late 1300s, going into the 1400s, Esau, Edom will be loosed out of his prison. Meaning what? The Lord would basically put a spirit on the Edomites to come out of the caves of the Caucasus Mountains. All right, mingle themselves amongst Jakes that was ruling throughout, Russia and Europe. Okay, learning how to be civilized again, learning how to bathe themselves, clean themselves, eat, right? And then of course, during the 1400s and so, you had the bubonic plague. Okay, it was also known as the Black Death. Well, basically, the Lord put a pestilence, a plague, a disease, if you will, to kill off, many of our forefathers during the 1400s, 1500s, right? Ultimately, for Esau to come back into power throughout Europe and Russia, okay, at the beginning of what? The so-called Renaissance period, okay? That's what Esau, Edom did when he came out of the Caucasus Mountains. Started taking over parts of Europe again, Russia, okay, was what was known as the Renaissance period. Was Renaissance means what? Rebirth. Okay, the rebirth of what? The rebirth of, ancient Greco-Roman philosophies, ideas, values, doctrines, okay, to spread throughout the earth again. And basically it was the revival or the rebirth or the Renaissance, right, of Edomite supremacy in the earth. Okay. And from the Renaissance period, of course, you had the Spanish Empire, which ruled for a period of time. Then later on, the French Empire, was ruled for a short period of time. And then later on, during the mid 1800s, you had the British Empire. Okay. And then later on after that, what? America, Babylon the Great, became the dominant superpower of the earth. Okay, especially after World War II. All right. So from the Renaissance period up until now, is all led to what? America, Babylon the Great, all right, rising into power. Okay, to pretty much represent the peak of Edomite supremacy in this outer days. All right. And it says, verse 8, this is how basically Esau, Edom would establish his rulership. Okay, besides the sword, of course. Revelation 20 verse 8, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog. Okay, Gog and Magog, when you go into Ezekiel 38, represents Russia. Okay, the land of the ancient land of Gog and Magog. Okay, is modern day Russia, southern Russia. Okay, so Gog and Magog right here represents Russia. All right, and again, that correlates with Ezekiel the 38th chapter. All right, but it says Gog and Magog to gather themselves to battle, which we see going on, especially in these latter days. Russia is rising up in power. Okay, military power against the West, especially against America, Babylon the Great. Okay, we also see these different smaller nations, teaming up with Russia as well, pursuant to Ezekiel 38. Countries by the likes of Libya, Persia, which is Iran, which we clearly see in in this current day, Iran linking up with Russia along with China. okay, as well as Ethiopia, right, Libya, all right, Turkey is soon going to link with Russia, which is Togomar, pursuant to Ezekiel 38, okay, and as well Germany is also spoken of in the scriptures to link up with Russia, okay, Ashkenaz, as you read in Ezekiel 38, all right, this is all prophetic, and it says to gather them together to battle, okay, World War III, also known as Armageddon. It says the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. All right. But the main point, as it said in verse 8 again, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth. All right. And when we go into this word deceive, all right, because that's what's been at the forefront. Okay. That's what's really been at the forefront of Esau's wicked rulership in these latter days. Deception. All right. And when we go into this word deceive,
Strong's G 4105 Planao. Planao.
right, and it means to cause to stray, to lead astray, all right, to lead aside from the right way, all right, and then it says metaphorically to lead away from the truth. See that? To lead away from the truth. All right, and it even says down here on the definition E. That's that's spiritual right there. As you see right here on the definition E, it says to be led away in error and sin. And again, we know Esau, Edom, pursuant to 2 Thessalonians 2, is the man of sin. All right, the son of perdition. Okay, so this word deceive, as it goes into, it says to lead away from the truth. All right, so everything in the Esau, Edom, every bit, every aspect of Esau, Edom's rulership in his outer days. Okay, America, Babylon the Great, this beast system, the NATO and the EU, the image of this system, all right, how it models itself after the ancient Greco-Roman Empire, okay, the NWO agenda, the MOTB, which is the micro C-hip, okay, even the small hats, all right, it would all be rooted in lies, okay, total lies, okay. Everything that this man will be about in his outer days will be against truth, okay, especially the truth of Yahweh Ba'Shem Shai, okay, calling themselves the chosen people, walking around calling themselves Christians, acting as if they're about the Bible, right, this, that, and the third, okay, pushing their pseudoscience and their technology and their false religion and their false narratives to justify waging war and coming down with the sword and labeling the people that he wages war against as savages, low IQs, right, dehumanizing them, okay. Everything about this man's rulership would be all about lies, deceptions, okay. And even as the scripture speaks about in the book of Psalms 144, it says what? Okay, talking about the wicked Esau, Edom, it says, their right hand is the right hand of falsehood. You see that? Everything that Esau pushes as righteousness, standards, morals, progression, peace and safety, right? It would all be rooted in falsehood, okay? Because that's ultimately what this devil is all about. Falsehood, presenting himself as a false god, a false messiah, all right? Using the pseudoscience technology to perform false miracles, okay? Counterfeit miracles, as it speaks of in 2 Thessalonians 2, when you're reading that chapter in the NLT, all right? So everything about Esau, Edom will be based on falsehood. And so now here we are in his outer days, as now all of his lies are being challenged, okay, through what? Truth, coming out, okay, starting with the elect of Yahweh Ba'Shem Shai waking up in his outer days, all right, testifying against his devil, preaching this everlasting gospel, okay, now the truth is out to challenge all the lies of Esau, Edom, from history to his pseudoscience, okay, what a man is, what a woman is, all right, how food should be, how to take care of the earth, right, how to take care of the water, all right. All these lies of Esau, Edom are now being challenged because of the truth of Yahweh Ba'Shem Shai springing up in his outer days, all right. And even, even his own tongue has fallen upon himself, because you have a lot of Edomites along with other heathen nations as well. All right, but especially Edomites. All right, these truthers, these Edomite Christians and whatnot that we see all throughout social media and these different platforms. Even they're using their voices and their platforms to curse out their wicked rulers and their wicked leaders, right? Exposing their wicked agendas, okay? Their wicked satanic history, okay? And so now we see these outer days, we see more of a push by the elites of Esau Edom to attack people's First Amendment rights, right? Their rights of free speech, all right, freedom of religion, freedom of expression and protest and all these things, more than we see Esau Edom cracking down on people's Second Amendment rights, which is what? Their right to bear arms. Because what? Esau Edom, starting with their elites, they're not threatened by the sword. They're not threatened by violence. Okay, they're not threatened by people forming these different militias. Because if anything, that's exactly what Esau wants. Okay, he wants the people to rise up, right, and make a move, right? So that what? So that Esau Edom and his elites can be justified in making a move against the people, right? Via order out of chaos, right? Establishing martial law and the Insurrection Act, right? Locking everything down, okay? To be justified and totally doing away with people's constitutional rights, all right? And invading people's privacy, okay? Taking certain people off of social media for speaking particular messages against America or against the NWO agenda or against the small hats, right? So that what? So that Esau Edom can regain control over their narrative, all right, and ultimately eliminate truth out of the earth, okay, especially the preaching of the Bible. As Scripture says in Isaiah 29, Esau wants to make it a man an offender for a word, right? As a matter of fact, let's get that. Isaiah 29 verse 20, it says, "For the terrible one is brought to naught." Okay, who's the terrible one? Esau Edom, all right, the tyrant, the oppressor, right? It says, and the scorner is consumed, right? And how is Esau Edom, the scorner, being consumed? By the Spirit of the Lord's mouth, okay, by the mouth of the prophets, the men of the Lord, starting with the apostles and the bishops and the elders of Great Millstone, down to the least of us that are of the hopeful elect, as well as the men that labor before them, right? And it says, all that watch for iniquity are cut off, all right? And that's what's getting ready to happen to this devil, all right, when Yahweh Shah returns. He's going to cut this devil off, okay? Hey, even as King David said in the book of Psalms 94, okay? Psalms 94, all right, this King David speaking about the workers of iniquity, right? The elites of Esau Edom, his left hand priesthood, and those that rub elbows with them, and these technocrats, right? What did he say down in verse 21? Psalms 94 verse 21. It says, "They gathered themselves together against the soul of the righteous," okay, which is who? Us, the hopeful elect, okay, the remnant. And it says, "and condemn innocent blood," by doing what? Gaslighting, okay, getting ready to accuse us, demonize us, label us as anti-Sem, right? Make us an offender for a word, as we're going to go back to in Isaiah 29. And it says, verse 22, "But the Lord Yahweh is my defense, and my power. Yahweh is the rock of my refuge." Verse 23, "And he shall bring upon them their own iniquity, and shall cut them off in their own wickedness. Yea, the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shai, our power, shall cut them off." Okay, and what did we just read in Isaiah 29, verse 20 again? "For the terrible one is brought to naught, and the scorner is consumed, and all that watch for iniquity are cut off." Yeah, because hey, as we always say, when Esau comes down with great wrath and it makes a move against, all right, the elect, the remnant of the nation of Israel, Lord would not be able to number. Hey, that's when Yahweh Bashim Shai is going to come down with great wrath upon his devil and make his move against his devil. Okay, lift up a standard for the elect, right? Perform miracles, divine intervention, and the Lord's going to cut this devil off. All right. And it says, verse 21, that make a man an offender for a word, and lay a snare for him that reproveth in a gate. Yeah, and what's a part of Esau's snare? That is going to lay for him that reproveth in a gate. Okay, people that are online speaking particular truths and messages and whatnot. What's the snare that Esau's going to lay for them? Okay, using AI and Palantir to persecute, people that are online and on social media and different platforms speaking particular truths, right? He's going to persecute them, okay? Label them as anti-Sem, label them as, conspiracy theorists and, this, that, and the third, right? T-heirists, okay? And ultimately pass unrighteous decrees and draconian laws to off many people that are speaking out against the small hats and speaking out against this, Trump administration and against this beast system overall. And it says, and turn aside the just for a thing of naught. Okay, and the NWO system is a thing of naught at the end of the day. All right. Let me get this as well. This is Job 15, verse 35. It says, they conceive mischief and bring forth vanity, and their belly prepare deceit. Okay. And let's read this in the AMP. Job 15, verse 35 in the AMP. It says, they conceive mischief and bring forth wickedness, and their inmost soul prepares deceit and fraud. See that? And that's what this system is all about. Deceit, fraud, wickedness, mischief. Okay, lies at the end of the day. All right, establishing everything based off of, lies. Okay, anti-truth against Yahweh Shemel Shai. All right, and let me get this in the book of Sirach. Let me hurry up and get this in Sirach. Sirach 28 and verse 18. It says, many have fallen by the edge of the sword, but not so many as have fallen by the tongue. Okay, Esau Edom knows that the tongue, all right, words, messages, and doctrines are, more powerful than the sword. Okay, actual physical weapons. Okay, it says, I'm gonna jump down to verse 23. Sirach 28, verse 23. It says, such as forsake the Lord, Yahweh Shemel Shai shall fall into it. Okay, Esau Edom has forsaken the Lord. Okay, he was created to forsake the Lord because what? He was created to be the wicked. It says, such as forsake the Lord shall fall into it. Okay, it being what? The sword. It says, and shall burn in them and not be quenched. You see, Esau Edom is being burnt up by this word going out. He's being burnt up by the truth. You see that? It is truth of the gospel, the truth of who the true Israelites are in these outer days, is spreading like wildfire throughout the four corners of the earth, as you would have the elect waking up all across the earth. Okay, and Esau Edom is being burnt up by the truth, because what? It's a shameful spewing all over his glory. He's being made bare. He can no longer hide himself. Okay, and that's another thing. One of the another major aspect to how Esau Edom has gained the power that he has to this very day is through secrecy. Okay, being able to do wickedness and iniquity, right? Pushing pseudoscience and lies while remaining hidden in secret. You see that? And so that's another major aspect of why truth is the number one threat against Esau Edom in his outer days, because it's undoing his secrecy. Is exposing him, right? Is exposing a man behind the curtain, so to speak. It says again, Sirach 18 and 23 again, such as forsake the Lord shall fall into it, all right, the sword, and shall burn in them and not be quenched. It shall be sent upon them as a lion and devour them as a leopard. Okay, meaning what? Truth would be a major aspect of Esau's judgment. Okay, as he will be testified against in his outer days at an all-time high before Yahweh Shema Shai brings judgment upon them. You see that? And let's also get this in 2nd Ezra, the 6th chapter, all right, at the end of Esau's world, right? 2nd Ezra 6 and verse 27. It says, "For evil shall be put out, and deceit shall be quenched." You see that? So at the end of Esau's world, all of its deceit, as we read of in Revelation 20 earlier, his deceit will be quenched via what? Okay, this word, which is likened to rivers of living water, as Yahweh said in the book of John, right? It says, "For evil shall be put out, and deceit shall be quenched." Verse 28. "As for faith, it shall flourish." Okay, via what? The elect, the remnant of the nation of Israel waking up. It says, "Corruption shall be overcome, and the truth, which hath been so long without fruit, shall be declared." Okay, and is being declared throughout the four corners of the earth via the men of the Lord standing upon our feet in these outer days, preaching this everlasting gospel. Okay, via the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit of Yahweh Shema Shai. Okay, in the name of Yahweh Shema Shai, standing stiffly and standing boldly for this testimony. Okay, casting down Esau's stronghold, right, and quenching all of his lies. All right, and as we go to the very next chapter, 2nd Ezra 7 and 43, it says, 2nd Ezra 7 and 43, it says, "But the day of doom shall be the end of this time." Okay, the day of doom is going to be the end of Esau's time, the end of Esau's world. And when you look up the word doom in the Etam online, it goes into judgment, basically. Okay, so the day of doom, all right, judgment, is going to be the end of Esau's time. It says, "And the beginning of the immortality for the come." Okay, to come for who? The Israelites, starting with us, the hopeful elect. Okay, the remnant. All right, it says, "Wherein corruption is past." Verse 44, "Intemperance is at an end, infidelity is cut off, righteousness is grown, and truth is sprung up." Okay, and that's what's going on these outer days. Truth is sprung up. Okay, to quench all of Esau's lies, his deception, to cast down his strongholds, right? To expose Esau, Edom, and make him bare. Bring all kinds of shameful spewing all over his glory, right? Bring shameful spewing upon the glory of the small hats, showing the world that they're not the chosen people of the Holy Scriptures, nor do they belong in that land, right? It says, verse 45, "Then shall no man be able to save him that is destroyed, nor to oppress him that had gotten a victory." So you see that? So this is how powerful truth, okay, especially the truth of the Holy Scriptures, is in these outer days to to cast down Esau's rulership, as well as his NWO agenda. Via this truth being sprung up in his outer days, okay, and being declared, it will lead to what, as it said in 45 again, no man being able to save him that's destroyed. All right, and who's written according to the Scriptures before the foundation of the heaven and the earth to be destroyed? Okay, Esau, Edom. All right, the man of sin, the son of perdition. Perdition, when you go into the Scriptures, it means destruction, ruin, calamity. See that? So via this truth being sprung up in his outer days, it will lead to Esau, Edom's judgment being declared, okay, and ultimately what? Him being destroyed, okay, to where no man will be able to save him, right? No man will be able to remove his neck from the Lord's judgment. And at the same time, this truth being sprung up will also lead to, as well, as it said, nor to oppress him that had gotten a victory. Okay, and who was written according to the Scriptures to get the victory? Okay, the elect, the remnant, okay, the 1/3 of the nation of Israel. Lord will not be of their number. So you see how much truth, okay, is so much of a threat to Edomite supremacy. Okay, because it would ultimately lead to his judgment being declared and pronounced throughout the four corners of the earth, as well as the victory of us, the hopeful elect, the remnant. All right, and I also want to get one more. Let's get the Wisdom of Solomon, the 8th chapter. All right, which in this chapter, Solomon is speaking about wisdom, right? So I want to jump down to verse 15. Wisdom of Solomon 8 verse 15 is speaking about wisdom. It says, "Horrible tyrants shall be afraid when they do but hear of me. I shall be found good among the multitude and valiant in war. See that? So wisdom is the number one thing that's waging war against Edomite supremacy. Okay, waging war through the spirit. All right, casting down Esau's stronghold. Right, exposing this devil. Okay, quenching all of his lies and BS. Right, and as it says, horrible tyrants shall be afraid of me. Horrible tyrants shall be afraid when they do but hear of me. So these devils, these Edomites, starting with the elite, all right, along with the rest of these heathen nations, the number one thing that they're afraid of and that they fear in these outer days at the end of their rulership is not the sword, okay, but rather truth, okay, the wisdom, knowledge, and instruction of Yahweh Shema Shai that's been sent down to the earth, okay, and especially down to us, the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel via the Holy Spirit, okay, to proclaim this devil's way to his face, okay, to testify against him, and ultimately to declare his judgment from Yahweh Shema Shai that's that's coming down the pipe upon this devil. See that? So so with that, Lord willing, this video is edifying, and until next time, shalom.